by MCC or the government to conduct any assessment, review, or evaluation of the program. The opportunity to audit, review, evaluate, or inspect facilities, assets, and activities funded in whole or in part by MCC funding. To conduct or the government to conduct any assessment, review, evaluation of the program. Okay, so government should allow an opportunity to audit, review, evaluate, or inspect facilities, assets, and activities funded in whole or partly by MCC funding. So audit reviews, 3.8 section A, government audits, except as the parties may agree otherwise in writing, the government will on at least semi-annual basis conduct or cause to be conducted financial audits of all disbursements of MCC funding covering the period from signing of this compact until the earlier of the following September 30th or March 31st and covering each 6-month period thereafter ending September 30 and March 30 through the end of the compact term. In addition, upon MCC's request, the government will ensure that such audits are conducted by an independent auditor approved by MCC, named on the list of local auditors approved by Inspector General or United States-based certified public accounting firm selected in accordance with MCC's guidelines for financial audits contracted by Millennium Challenge Corporation, accountable entities issued and revised from time to time by Inspector General. Audits will be performed in accordance with the audit guidelines and be subject to quality assurance oversight by the Inspector General. Each audit must be completed and the audit report delivered to MCC no later than 90 days after the applicable audit period or such other period as parties may otherwise agree in writing. The requirements of this section 3.8a do not preclude the Office of Auditor General of Nepal from conducting audits of MCA. Do not preclude, okay, the requirements of section 3.8a. Let's see the meaning of this as well. So it means prevent from happening or make impossible. Okay, so this section does not prevent Office of Auditor General of Nepal from conducting audits of MCA Nepal. So B number, audits of other entities. The government will ensure that MCC financed agreements between the government or any provider on the one hand and United States non-profit organization on the other hand state that the United States not-profit organization is subject to the applicable audit requirements contained in the Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and audit requirements for federal awards issued by United States Office of Management and Budget. United States for-profit covered provider, on the other hand, state that the United States for-profit organization is subject to audit by applicable United States government agency unless government and MCC agree otherwise in writing, and a non-US covered provider, on the other hand, state that a non-US covered provider is subject to audit in accordance with audit guidelines. Okay, so corrective actions, the government will use its best effort to ensure that each covered provider takes where necessary appropriate and timely corrective actions in response to audits. So any findings that have been pointed out through audits shall be corrected immediately. Considers whether the result of the covered provider's audit necessitates adjustment of the government records. So whether the audit necessitates adjustment of government records and permits independent auditors to have access to its records and financial statements as necessary. Audit by MCC. MCC will have the right to arrange for audits of the government use of MCC funding. Cost of audits, reviews, or evaluations. MCC funding may be used to fund the cost of any audits, reviews, or evaluations required under this compact. Communication, Article 4, Communications, Section 4.1, Communication. Any document or communication required to be submitted by either party to the other in this compact must be in writing and except as otherwise agreed with MCC in English. All such document or communication must be submitted to the address of each party set forth below or to such address as may be designated by any party in written notice to the other party. So for in case of MCC, it is Millennium Challenge Corporation. Attention is Vice President Compact Operations, 1099 14th Street, NW, New York, Washington DC, 20,005, and then United States of America. So telephone number is given, email is given, VP Operations at the rate mcc.gov, VP General Counsel at the rate mcc.gov, and then for Nepalese government it is Ministry of Finance, Finance Secretary, with a copy to the Joint Secretary, International Economic Cooperation Coordination Division, Singadarwar, Kathmandu. So section 4.2, representatives. For all the purposes of this compact, the government will be represented by individual holding the position of or acting as the Minister of Finance of Federal Democratic Republic of Nepal, and MCC is represented by individual holding position of or as Vice President Compact Operations. Each party by written notice to other party may designate one or more additional representative for all purposes of this compact except section 6.2a. The government hereby designates the future executive director of MCA Nepal as an additional representative. MCC hereby designates the Deputy Vice President, President of Compact Operations Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America as an additional representative. The party may change its principal representative to a new representative that holds a position of equal or higher authority upon written notice to the other party. Signatures. Signatures to this compact and to any amendment to this compact will be original signatures appearing on the same page or in exchange of letters or diplomatic notes. So Article 5, termination, suspension, expiration. Section 5.1, termination, suspension. Either party may terminate this compact without cause in its entirety by giving the other party 30 days prior written notice. MCC may also terminate this compact or MCC funding without cause in part by giving the government 30 days prior written notice. The MCC may immediately, upon written notice to the government, suspend or terminate this compact or MCC funding in whole or in part, and any obligation related thereto if MCC determines that any circumstance identified by MCC as a basis for suspension or termination has occurred, which circumstances include but are not limited to the following: the government fails to comply with its obligations under this compact or any other agreement or arrangement entered into by the government in connection with this compact or the program. So any other agreements also, if it fails to comply, then also this will be cancelled. So an event or series of events has occurred that makes it probable that any of the project objectives will not be achieved during the compact term, or that the government will not be able to perform its obligation under this compact. A use of MCC funding or continued implementation of this compact or program violates applicable law or United States government's policy, whether now or hereafter in effect. The government or any other person or receiving entity or entity receiving MCC funding or using government assets is engaged in activities that are contrary to national security interest of the United States. An act has been committed or an omission or an event has occurred that would render Nepal ineligible to receive United States economic assistance under Part 1 of Foreign Assistance Act of 1961 as amended. 22 USC 2151 its sequence by reason of the application of any provisions of such act or any other provisions of law. The government has engaged in patterns of action inconsistent with the criteria used to determine the eligibility of Nepal for assistance under MCA Act. The government or other person or entity receiving MCC funding or using program assets is found to have convicted of a narcotics offense or to have engaged in drug trafficking. So section 5.2 consequences of termination, suspension, expiration. The parties agree that they will endeavor in good faith to consult with the other party in event of the termination under section 5.1a. MCC may reinstate any suspended or terminated MCC funding under this compact if MCC determines that the government or relevant other party has committed to correct each condition for which MCC funding was suspended or terminated. So if they if they recorrected their course of action or whatever mistakes they have made, they will continue the funding or they would cancel the suspension or termination. Upon the suspension or termination, in whole, in part, or in part of this compact or any MCC funding, or upon the expiration of this compact, the provisions of Section 4.2 of the Program Implementation Agreement will govern the post-suspension, post-termination, or post-expiration treatment of MCC funding, any related disbursement and program assets, any portion of this compact, MCC funding, the program implementation agreement, or any other supplemental agreement that is not suspended or terminated will remain in full force. So refunds and violations, section 5.3. If any MCC funding, any interest or earnings thereon, or any program assets is used for any purposes in violation of the terms of this compact, the MCC may require the government to repay to MCC in US dollars the value of the misused MCC funding, interest, earnings, or assets plus interest within 30 days after the government's receipt of MCC's request for repayment. So it will require interest, earnings, everything. So the government will not use MCC's funding, proceeds thereof, or program assets to make such payments. Okay. So notwithstanding any other provisions in this compact or any other agreements to the contrary, MCC's right under section 5.3a to obtain a refund will continue during the compact term for a period of 5 years. Thereafter, or number 2 is 1 year after MCC receives actual knowledge of such violations, whichever is latter. So late payment interest. If the government fails to pay any amount under this compact or program implementation agreement when due, including amounts under section 2.8c and 5.3a, interest will be paid on such unpaid amount. Interest will occur on such unpaid amount at a rate equal to the then US Treasury current value of funds rate calculated on a daily basis and a 360-day year from the due date of such payments until such amount is paid in full. Any such payment will first be credited against interest due, and once the interest due is exhausted, then the payments will be credited against outstanding principal. So basically, if there is a violations or something that has happened and then the government has not paid the particular mentioned amount, then they will have to pay interest on a daily basis based upon the US Treasury current value of funds rate. Okay, so how much they are getting the funds from, that will be the interest rate, and then when the payment is made, first it is credited towards the interest, and once the interest has been fully paid, then only credited against principal. So section 5.1, survival. The government responsibilities under this section and section 2.7, 2.8, 3.2, F, 3.7, 3.8, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 and 6.4 will survive the expiration, suspension or termination of this compact, provided that the terms of section 2.8 will survive for only 120 days following this compact's expiration. So section 2.8 will survive for only 120 days following the compact's expiration. Okay, so article 6, compact annexes, amendments governing laws. So annexes. Each annex to this compact constitutes an integral part hereof, and reference to annex means an annex to this compact unless otherwise expressly stated. Section 6.2, amendments and modifications. The party may amend this compact only by written agreements. Such agreement will specify how it enters into force. Notwithstanding subsection A, parties agree that the government and the MCC may, by written agreement, will enter into force upon signature, modified any annexes to 1, to first suspend, terminate or modify any projects or activity, change the allocations of funds as set forth in Annex 2. So the party must have a written agreement for modifications, for suspension, termination or modification of any project or activity, and then for allocations of funds for any specific project, or modify the implementation framework described in Annex 1, add, change, delete any indicator, baseline or target or any other information set forth in Annex 3 in accordance with MCC, ME policy, add, delete, waive or any other conditions precedent described in Annex 4, or modify the mechanisms for exemption, exempting MCC's funding from taxes as set forth in Annex 7, provided that in each case as any such modification is consistent in all material aspect with the project objectives. Does not cause the amount of program funding to exceed the aggregate amount specified in section 2.1, as may be modified by operation of section 2.2e3. Does not cause the amount of compact CDF to exceed the aggregate amount specified in section 2.2a 4, which does not reduce the government's responsibilities or contribution of resources required under section 2.6a and 5, does not extend the compact term. C. The parties understand that any modifications of any annexes pursuant to section 6.2b may be entered into by the government without the need for further actions by government, including any parliamentary actions or satisfaction of any additional domestic requirements of Nepal. So modifications of any annexes pursuant to section this may be entered into by the government of Nepal without further actions from the government. So if there is any modification to be made, then you don't need to get the approval from parliament. Inconsistencies. In event of conflict or inconsistency between any annexes, any of the articles 1 through 8, such articles 1 through 8 as applicable will prevail. And this will prevail. The compact and any other agreements between the parties regarding the program and the compact will prevail. Governing laws. The compact is an international agreement, as such will be governed by the principles of international law. Additional instruments. Any reference to activities, obligations or rights undertaken or existing under or in furtherance of this compact or similar language will include activities, obligations, rights undertaken or existing under or herein furtherance of any agreement, document, instruments related to this compact and the program. Reference to MCC website. Any reference in this compact, the PIA or any other agreements entered in connection with this compact to a document or information available on or notified by posting on the MCC's website will be deemed a reference to such document or information as updated or constituted on the MCC website from time to time. So the information can be seen from there as well. And then section 6.7, reference to laws, regulations, policies, guidelines, references to compact expiration and termination. Each reference in this compact, the PIA or any other agreements entered into in connection with this compact to a law, regulation, policy, guideline or similar document will be constructed as a reference to such law, regulation, policy, guideline or similar document, as it may from time to time be amended, revised, replaced or extended, and will include any law, regulation, policy, guidelines or similar documents issued under or otherwise applicable or related to such law, regulation, policy, guideline or similar document. So even though there is a change in law, regulation, policy, guideline, whatever that is, it will still have reference. So each reference in this compact, the PIA or any other agreements entered into in connection with this compact to compact's expiration refers to the date on which the compact terms ends, is not terminated earlier, which in accordance with section 7.4 is 5 years after its entry into force. Each reference in any of the aforementioned documents to the compact termination refers to the compact ceasing in force prior to its expiration in accordance with section 5.1. So expiration will be normally after 5 years. If termination, if that is used, if it is ceased before its expiration date. So MCC status. So MCC is a United States government corporation acting on behalf of United States in implementation of this compact. MCC and the United States government assume no liability for any claims or losses arising out of activities or omissions under this compact. The government waives any and all kinds of claims against MCC or United States or any current or former officers or employee of MCC or United States for all the losses, damages, injury, or death arising out of activities and omissions under this compact, and agrees that it will bring any claim or legal proceedings of any kind against any of the above entities or persons for such losses, damages, injuries, or death. The government agrees that MCC and the United States government or any other current or former officer or employee of MCC or government United States government will be immune to the jurisdiction of all courts and tribunals of Nepal for any claim or loss arising out of activities or omissions under this compact. So Article 7, domestic requirements. The government will proceed in timely manner to complete all of its domestic requirements for this compact to enter into force. The parties understand that this compact upon entry into force will prevail over domestic laws of Nepal. Section 7.2, conditions precedent to entry into force. Before this compact enters into force, the program implementation agreement must be signed by parties thereto. The government must have delivered to MCC a letter signed and dated by the principal representative of the government or such any other duly authorized representative of the government acceptable to MCC, confirming that the government has completed its domestic requirements necessary for this compact to enter into force, and that other conditions precedent to entry into force in this section 7.2 have been met. A signed legal opinion from the Ministry of Law and Justice of Nepal in form and substance satisfactory to MCC, complete certified copies of all decrees, legislation, regulations, or any other government documents relating to government's domestic requirements necessary for this compact to enter into force, which MCC may post on its websites or otherwise make publicly available. MCC will not have determined at the time of this compact entry into force that the government has engaged in a pattern of actions inconsistent with the eligibility criteria for MCC funding, and the conditions set forth in Annex 5 has been satisfied. Section 7.3, date of entry into force. The compact will enter into force at the date of the letter from MCC to the government in exchange of letters confirming that MCC and the government have completed their domestic requirements for entry into force of this compact, and the conditions precedent to entry into force in Section 7.2 have been met to MCC's satisfaction. Compact terms. The compact will remain in force for 5 years after its entry into force unless terminated earlier under Section 5.1. So, application, provisional application. Upon signature of this compact and until this compact has entered into force in accordance with Section 7.3, the parties will provisionally apply the terms of this compact, provided no MCC funding other than compact CDF will be made available or dispersed before this compact enters into force. So it should be provisionally applied. So Article 8, additional government covenants. So Section 8.1, covenants for electricity transmission project. The government will ensure the full and expeditious cooperation of all relevant government entities to ensure that all land acquisition, site access, forest clearance required to implement the compact is provided in timely manner and consistent with MCC's policies. Signatures. So, in witness hereof, each party by its duly authorized representative has signed the compact, done at Washington DC, 14th day of September 2017 in the English language. So, representative over here, MCC is over here, and then they have given us the annexes as well. So these are the annexes that they are talking about. So let's look at the annex. Program descriptions. This Annex 1 describes the program that MCC's funding will support in Nepal during the compact term. So program overview, background and consultative process. So background, Nepal was initially selected by MCC's board of directors to develop a threshold program in December 2011 based on strength of its performance on MCC's policy indicators following a period of civil and political unrest in Nepal from 1996 to 2006. Before a threshold program was finalized, the MCC's BOD selected Nepal in December 2014 to develop a compact. In this selection decision, MCC's board of directors recognized Nepal's effort to establish rule of law and democratic institutions and highlighted the importance to United States and South Asia of a politically stable and economically growing Nepal. Much of the work prepared for the threshold program, as such, the constraints analysis and certain powers and transport policy and institutional analysis were completed shortly after Nepal was selected to develop a compact and were repurposed for the development of the compact. Since December 2014, MCC and the government have focused on developing a compact to address the identified constraints to growth in Nepal. Following consultations with the private sector, civil society, and development partners, the government and MCC ultimately agreed to focus on two of the identified constraints: inadequate supply of electricity and the high cost of transport. So investment in Nepal's electricity sector is particularly critical to the impacts of inadequate supply, as Nepal has historically suffered from the worst electricity shortages in South Asia. Demand for electricity has historically exceeded domestic electricity supply, resulting in load shedding, particularly during the dry winter months when hydropower generation is low. The undersupply of electricity is further exaggerated by high losses in transmission and distribution. Low availability of electricity creates significant costs for business which have to run generators on expensive imported fuel. With regard to the high cost of transport, this constraint has significant economic impacts due to landlocked and mountainous nature of Nepal, as well as its reliance on cross-border trade. The program will focus on road maintenance, which suffers from insufficient funding and ineffective technical and management practices. So, consultative process. Since being selected to develop a compact, the government efforts in Nepal have focused on development of a compact designed around the identified constraints. Throughout the compact development process, the government has engaged civil society, trade associations, development partners, political parties, and other relevant communities and stakeholders to seek their support, guidelines, and feedback in project design and risk mitigation. To ensure the proposed investment for the Nepal Compact have the widest political support and the greatest potential for impact, MCC has worked closely with United States Agency or USAID and the United States Department of State, as well as Government of India and variety of development partners to identify design investment described further in this Annex 1. So descriptions of program and beneficiaries. Program descriptions. The program focuses on two key binding constraints to economic growth: the inadequate supply of electricity and the high cost of transport. The root cause of Nepal's power sector problems have contributed to low and slow investment in the electricity value chain, leading to a shortages of electricity caused by slow expansion of domestic generation, low levels of electricity imports due to inadequate domestic and cross-border transmission infrastructure, and high technical losses in the system. The program intends to alleviate the inadequate supply of electricity by increasing the flow of electricity from existing and future generation plants into the network, while also facilitating electricity trade with India. In combination, these elements are expected to reduce load shedding and make a new source for domestic generation become financially viable. In addition, proposed technical assistance is intended to strengthen the planning and regulatory environment, thereby promoting enhanced private sector investments in the longer term. With regard to high cost of transport, which has significant economic effects due to landlocked and mountainous nature of Nepal and its reliance on cross-border trade. The root cause analysis identified the potential causes as insufficient funding for the creation maintenance of roads, insufficient customs and border enforcement, and inefficient trucking industry, and inadequate road coverage. The program will focus on addressing insufficient funding for road maintenance by improving technical and management practices. Funding for road maintenance as well as technical assistance will be provided to Department of Roads and to Roads Board Nepal, which is agency responsible for collecting, allocating road maintenance funds to assist the prioritization of investments. Beneficiaries. The program is expected to benefit more than 5 million, approximately 23 million people by the end of the compact term, as detailed below. So, as you can see over here, electricity transmission project, beneficiaries, households, 50 lakh households over here, 2 crore. So beneficiary population has been categorized under $2, under $2 to $4, and then per day, and then greater than $4, 62%. Road maintenance will help $2 to $4, 39% of the population, and then 53% of the population. So the beneficiary of electricity transmission project are the population of grid connected households within Nepal who are expected to experience increased availability of electricity for the consumption as a result of the project. The beneficiaries of the road maintenance projects are households living in village development committees and municipalities crossed by roads selected for periodic maintenance or using MCC's funding. Descriptions of project. Set forth below is a description of each of the projects that the government will implement or cause to be implemented using MCC's funding to advance the applicable project objectives. In addition, specific activities will be undertaken within the project. Each an activity, including sub-activities, are also described. Electricity transmission project, summary of project and activities. So the objective of electricity transmission project is to increase domestic electricity supply for consumption by improving the availability and reliability of electricity in Nepal's electricity grid. To achieve the electricity transmission project objective, MCC's funding will support the following expenditures as further detailed in this section. Construction of transmission lines to expand the high voltage transmission backbone inside Nepal and the Nepal side of a second cross-border transmission line with India. Construction of 3 substations along the MCC-funded transmission lines. Technical assistance activities to improve sustainability of the power sector and MCC's investment. Necessary expenditures for project management, environmental and social impact assessment, engineering and technical supervision to ensure the electricity transmission project complies with MCC and the government of Nepal's policies and standards. So transmission line activity. So through the transmission line activity, MCC funding will be used to construct approximately 300 kilometers of double circuit 400 kilowatt transmission line inside Nepal that includes the following components. Segment starting from the northeast of Kathmandu at Lopsi Ferry to west of Kathmandu near Ratmate. A segment from Ratmate to the industrial town of Hetauda, which is located south of Kathmandu. Other segment from Ratmate to Damoli. To the west, a segment from Damoli southwest towards Butwal. A link from Butwal to Indian border. Bikas sub-activity. In addition to construct some of the transmission lines, the transmission lines activity includes benefits integration through knowledge sharing and social acceptance sub-activity. The goal of this activity is to build relationship with affected families by delivering direct benefits that complement the improvements in electricity supply that will be realized by Nepal as a whole. Historically, transmission lines have crossed communities while contributing little to no direct benefits to their well-being. As a result of not realizing direct benefits and dissatisfaction with land valuation, communities in Nepal have often protested the construction of such infrastructure, leading to disruptions, delay, and even damage to infrastructure assets. Recognizing the potential challenges like this, the Bikas sub-activity seeks to preemptively provide services to communities beyond resettlement compensation. The environmental management measures typically found under environmental and social management plans. This approach also ensures that the project affected communities experience clear gains from the electricity transmission project and response to lessons learned from other donor funded projects in Nepal that suggest that this form of community engagement can help reduce opposition to and disruption of implementation of electricity transmission project. The final scope of this sub-activity will be to determine through a consultative process after compact signing, and may include a variety of services to ensure that the affected communities are benefited from the program, with an emphasis on electricity consumption. Possible benefit sharing services may include, but shall not be limited to, connecting communities to the electricity grid as well as off-grid solutions using technology such as micro hydropower turbines or solar voltaic panels. So, substations activity. The activity is complementary to the transmission lines activity. MCC funding will be used to construct 3 substations to increase or decrease transmitted voltage for further transmission or distribution to consumers. The substation will be located at close to Ratmate, Damyoli, and Butwal. Separately from the program, the government has agreed to upgrade 2 substations that are connected to electricity polling hubs along the transmission lines constructed as a part of transmission lines activity at or near Sublapsi, Fedi and Hetoda. The government upgrade of substations at Lapsi, Fedi and Hetoda will not be considered part of government's contribution to the program. The power sector technical assessment activity. The activity aims to support the establishment of an independent electricity sector regulator (ERC), as well as capacity building through technical assistance to bring transparency, efficiency, and competition into Nepal's power sector. The MCC funding will be used to embed expert with ERC to improve ERC's skills in rulemaking, dispute resolutions, and economic and technical regulations. Similarly, one or more advisors will be embedded in the Ministry of Energy and Department of Electricity Development to facilitate coordination of sector regulation. The activity will also focus on helping NEA improve its transmission business in the areas of regulatory cost recovery, improve grid operations, and better system planning. Systematic efforts may involve a training in system and market operations, financial management system improvements for transmission transactions and assets, targeted human resource policies and job classifications, so that when government is ready to establish an independent transmission company, the NEA has the tools and skills to become an effective operation. The activity will also support a study to examine and address key social issues such as low income and marginalized groups' ability to pay for electricity or access electricity, and the institutionalization of a lifeline tariff into the government's policy statement. Finally, the activity will support NEA's Environment and Social Studies Department in strengthening institutional capacity in social impact assessment and inclusive stakeholders engagement through the development of guidelines, tools, and trainings. So basically, they have said that as well. And then project management and technical oversight activity. So the project management and the technical oversight activity will complement the transmission lines and substation activities to successfully implement the proposed electricity transmission project infrastructure investment while complying with MCC's technical, environmental, and social standards. MCC funding will support necessary expenditures for project management, environmental social impact assessment, mitigation, and engineering and technical supervision of electricity transmission project. So, this project will who are the beneficiaries? All grid connected consumers, which is 72% of the population. Projected population at the end of the compact is 31.5 million, and estimated 23 million beneficiary individuals in 5 million beneficiary households who are expected to benefit. So we'll look at electricity environment and social mitigation measures in next part. Okay.